Welcome back to my YouTube channel, folks. If you're into coins, treasure hunting, or just the thrill of uncovering hidden value in everyday change, you're in for a treat today because we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating, overlooked, and shockingly valuable coins you could ever come across in your pocket. Yes, we're talking about the 1999 Jefferson nickel, a 5-cent piece that, under certain circumstances, can fetch a jaw-dropping $4.56 or even more depending on its specific errors, minting mistakes, and rare characteristics. It might sound unbelievable that a simple 5-cent coin could be worth hundreds of dollars, but when you understand the complex world of numismatics, coin grading, and error coin valuation, it starts to make perfect sense why collectors and dealers alike scramble to get their hands on certain error versions of the 1999 nickel. So, buckle in because we're about to take a deep dive into every imaginable detail that makes this coin so desirable. From die errors to planchet flaws, striking anomalies to minting quirks, and the wider context of coin production that adds up to a perfect storm of collector value. First off, the 1999 nickel, minted in Philadelphia, isn't considered rare in its standard, unremarkable form. In fact, hundreds of millions were struck that year, so the base coin itself is incredibly common. But what makes certain examples worth hundreds of dollars isn't the quantity, but the quality, or rather, the lack thereof, thanks to the unique minting errors that slip through the cracks of quality control. One of the most notable and value-driving mistakes found in the 1999 nickel is what's called an off-center strike, where the design is not properly aligned with the planchet during the minting process, causing a portion of the design to be missing or misaligned. This kind of error can be minor or dramatic, and the value generally increases with the degree of the offset, especially when the date and mint mark are still visible. Imagine a coin where nearly a third of Jefferson's bust is missing, and yet the 1999 and P are still crisply visible. That's the kind of error that turns 5 cents into hundreds of dollars. But off-center strikes are just the beginning. There are other errors, like double strikes, where the coin was struck more than once either in the same position or slightly rotated between strikes, resulting in a ghostly duplication of the design elements that can look both eerie and fascinating to collectors. A 1999 nickel with a clear double strike, especially when it includes doubled letters or features around Jefferson's profile, can skyrocket in value because these kinds of errors are not only rare, but also visually striking, making them ideal centerpieces for a collector's display. Even more dramatic are examples that were struck on the wrong planchet, meaning the blank piece of metal used to make the coin wasn't actually intended for a nickel at all. For instance, a few known 1999 nickels were mistakenly struck on planchets meant for foreign coins or for other denominations, such as pennies or dimes, which results in incorrect size, weight, and metal composition, all of which are easily detectable once you weigh or examine the coin closely. These types of errors, called wrong planchet errors, are particularly desirable because they show an intersection of minting processes gone awry, and because they require a trained eye and a bit of luck to discover, they command high premiums on the collector market. Yet another highly sought-after error is the clip planchet, where a portion of the coin appears as though it has been bitten off or cut away, often due to the punching machine overlapping when cutting blanks from metal sheets. A clipped 1999 nickel with a visible date and mint mark is worth a significant premium, especially if the clip is clean, crescent-shaped, and not too small to be overlooked. Even more intriguing are broad strike errors, where the coin was struck without the retaining collar that keeps the metal from spreading outward. This causes the finished coin to be wider and flatter than normal, often pushing the design elements outward in a warped but symmetric way that collectors find highly desirable. Combine this with a sharp strike and minimal wear, and suddenly that oddly shaped coin is fetching hundreds. Then there's the world of die cracks, cuds, and die breaks, tiny fractures or missing parts in the die that create raised or sunken areas on the coin's surface. In 1999, several examples of nickels surfaced with significant die cracks running through Jefferson's head or the reverse Monticello building. In some cases, these cracks are minor and simply add a small premium, but in others, they're so dramatic that they create completely new visual elements on the coin's surface, which can turn them into major error specimens worth serious money. And then, of course, we can't overlook the role that coin grading plays in elevating the value of these error nickels. A 1999p nickel with a mint error is valuable, yes, but if that same coin is also in mint state condition, meaning it has no signs of wear, bright luster, and sharp detail, it could easily double or triple in price. Coins graded MS65 or higher by reputable services like PCGS or NGC are especially prized, and error coins in high mint states are rarer still, because most error coins end up being handled more roughly or pulled from circulation more quickly due to their odd appearance. And speaking of odd appearances, some 1999p nickels exhibit what collectors call strike-through errors, where a piece of debris, be it a thread, grease, or even a small fragment of metal, was lodged between the die and the planchet during the strike, leaving a permanent, unusual impression in the coin's surface. These strike-throughs are like tiny, one-of-a-kind signatures, each completely unique and often commanding collector premiums based on the size, shape, and clarity of the error. In some truly rare cases, collectors have even found 1999p nickels with dramatic misalignments on both the obverse and reverse, or combinations of multiple errors, say, a broad strike and a double strike on the same coin, which make those examples exceptionally rare and highly valuable. But what really makes all of this so fascinating is the idea that these coins were never supposed to be valuable in the first place. They were supposed to be ordinary, everyday nickels used in vending machines, piggy banks, and spare change jars. And yet, thanks to a confluence of mistakes, minting quirks, and collector fascination, they've been elevated to the status of prized numismatic treasures. In fact, part of the allure is the accessibility. These are ancient Roman coins buried in an archaeological site or rare colonial gold pieces locked in museum vaults. These are coins that might still be floating around in circulation today. Imagine the thrill of realizing you've been walking around with a $4.56 nickel in your pocket all along, just waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. That's the magic of numismatics, and that's why the 1999p nickel holds such a special place in the hearts of collectors. Whether it's a dramatic off-center strike, a planchet error, a die crack, or a high-grade specimen that looks like it was struck yesterday, these coins serve as tiny, metallic reminders that value isn't always where you expect to find it, and sometimes the most mundane objects can hold secrets worth uncovering. So next time you're going through your change, take a closer look at those nickels, especially if you see that little P mint mark under the date. You never know when you might stumble across a piece of minting history that turns your ordinary 5 cents into an extraordinary payday. Keep hunting, stay curious, and who knows, maybe the next great coin find is already in your pocket. Next, 2015 P5 cent USA coin. Rare coins meet big value, and every pocket change could hide a small fortune. Today we've got a jaw-dropping story for coin collectors, treasure hunters, and anyone curious about how a simple 5-cent coin from 2015 ended up being worth an incredible $432 because of a series of fascinating errors and minting mistakes that turned it from ordinary currency into a highly coveted collector's item. And we're going to dig deep into every single detail that makes this nickel so incredibly valuable. So, buckle up and listen closely, because the next few minutes could change how you look at every coin in your wallet or piggy bank, especially if you happen to come across one of these error-ridden gems that are now sought after across the collecting world and commanding impressive prices on auction blocks and online marketplaces where collectors scramble to own one of these flawed yet fantastic pieces of minting history. So what exactly makes the 2015 P5-cent coin worth hundreds of dollars when its face value is just 5 cents? Well, it all begins with the production process at the Philadelphia Mint, where hundreds of millions of nickels were struck that year. And although the vast majority of them came out perfectly normal, a small fraction had defects so unique and rare that they've caught the attention of serious numismatists who analyze die errors, planchet flaws, misalignments, and striking anomalies with eagle-eyed precision. And among these 2015 P nickels lies a group that exhibits an incredible range of minting mistakes that individually may be minor, but when combined on a single coin elevate its rarity and desirability astronomically. Starting with die clashes. One of the major errors identified on some of these nickels were the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet in between, leaving behind ghost-like impressions of design elements from the opposite side, which can be faintly seen superimposed in places they should never appear, such as Jefferson's portrait having traces of Monticello, or the word Monticello itself oddly appearing over Jefferson's cheek or jawline, and collectors go wild for this because it indicates a lapse in mint protocols, a mishap that occurs rarely and unpredictably, often before maintenance crews notice and correct the error, and in those moments, flawed coins like these get released into circulation, escaping the tight quality control and ending up in pockets and coin rolls across the country. Now add to that the possibility of misaligned dies, where either the obverse or reverse die was slightly off-register, causing the strike to be skewed, with the design elements drifting off-center and creating an unusual appearance that deviates from the symmetry expected in mint state coins. And the more severe the misalignment, the rarer the coin becomes, particularly when combined with other issues like broad strikes where the coin lacks a defined rim and appears wider and flatter than standard nickels, often because it wasn't held properly within the striking chamber during minting, allowing the metal to flow more freely than intended and resulting in an irregular shape that immediately catches the eye of experienced collectors. But it doesn't stop there. The 2015 P nickel has also been found with die cracks and cuds, which are raised lines or blobs of metal that form due to die fatigue and breakage, such as a cracked die forming a long raised vein running across Jefferson's face or hair, or a cud that obliterates part of the rim or lettering, replacing it with a lumpy mass of extra metal that was never part of the design. And these dramatic alterations not only make each flawed coin unique, but also serve as tangible evidence of the minting process itself, with each mark and distortion telling the story of a stressed die nearing the end of its life cycle or improper handling during press setup. And beyond mechanical errors, we also have planchet anomalies, such as coins struck on underweight or overweight planchets, or even on foreign planchets intended for other denominations or countries, resulting in off-metal strikes that are visually and compositionally distinct from normal nickels and often detectable by color, weight, or diameter. And these are among the rarest types of errors, making them exponentially more valuable. But even more fascinating are double dies, where a single side of the coin shows doubling of the design elements, usually the lettering or date, due to the die being improperly manufactured during the hubbing process. And on 2015 P nickels some examples show distinct doubling on "In God We Trust" or "Liberty" or the digits of the date 2015, making them not only collectible but also part of a well-documented category of errors that specialists actively seek out. And depending on the clarity and severity of the doubling, the value can skyrocket well past $100, $200, or even up to $400, like the one sold for $432, particularly when the coin also maintains decent overall condition, with minimal wear and strong eye appeal, further increasing its demand. And sometimes the mint mark itself, the P, denoting Philadelphia, is poorly punched, repunched, or even missing altogether, adding yet another layer of intrigue to the coin's identity. And in a hobby where rarity, condition, and story converge to determine value, these 2015 P nickels tick all the boxes, offering collectors a thrilling combination of mistake and mystery. And what's particularly interesting about this coin is that it's not a 1 in a billion lottery ticket, but rather a real possibility for sharp-eyed individuals who regularly check their change, search through bank rolls, or buy bulk lots of circulated coins online to hunt for treasures like this. Because while the average 2015 P nickel is worth face value, the mistruck or error-laden versions have now become high-demand niche collectibles with documented sales and rising market value, and forums, social media groups, and auction sites all buzz with sightings and trades of these rare variants, some even getting slabbed and graded by professional grading services like NGC or PCGS, with high-end error coins receiving special error designations and authentication that help drive their price higher by providing assurance to buyers and establishing provenance in the competitive world of coin collecting. And when you consider the historical importance of error coins, not just as collectibles, but as physical evidence of the limitations and fallibility of human and mechanical systems, they take on an almost philosophical appeal, showing us how even mass production can yield one-of-a-kind artifacts. So the next time you get change at the grocery store, don't just toss it into a jar or ignore it, because that plain-looking nickel might contain the very flaws that make it an extraordinary collector's item. And if it's a 2015 P, it's worth taking an extra close look under magnification, scanning for oddities in the design, the edges, the date, the mint mark, or the overall strike quality, because any of those telltale signs, die clash remnants, doubling, off-center alignment, cuds, cracks, or planchet irregularities, could mean you've stumbled upon one of the elusive coins that bridge the gap between the mundane and the miraculous, transforming a humble 5-cent piece into a prize worth over $400. And that's the magic of numismatics, where history, art, industry, and chance come together in a small metal disc that fits in your palm yet carries stories and value far beyond its size. And if you're just getting into coin collecting or thinking of starting, this is the perfect example of why the hobby continues to grow in popularity and fascination, because it reminds us that remarkable things can hide in plain sight, just waiting for someone curious and observant enough to notice. And whether you're searching coin rolls, attending coin shows, or just keeping an eye on your pocket change, stay alert for these kinds of extraordinary finds. And who knows, maybe the next 2015 P nickel that crosses your path will carry those rare imperfections that turn it into something truly special and highly valuable. And that's all for today's deep dive into one of the most surprising and valuable modern nickels ever released into circulation. So stay curious, keep searching, and remember, every coin has a story, but some are worth a whole lot more than 5 cents. Next, 1997 D5 sent you a coin collectors and treasure hunters, where every pocket change might hold a fortune. And today we're diving deep into one of the most intriguing stories in modern numismatics, the fascinating tale of the 1997 D Jefferson nickel, a 5-cent coin that sparked serious buzz among collectors and investors alike, not for being old or rare in the traditional sense, but because of a combination of astonishing errors, minting mistakes, and production anomalies that transformed what should have been an ordinary coin into a piece of American minting history worth up to $400 or more, and in some cases even higher, depending on condition, visibility of the errors, and overall demand from the numismatic market. So if you've ever found a nickel in your change and wondered if it might be worth more than 5 cents, stay with us, because this episode could help you identify a jackpot hiding in plain sight. Starting with a bit of background, the 1997 D nickel was minted at the Denver Mint, as denoted by the D mint mark typically found on the right side of Monticello on the reverse of the coin. And while millions were produced and circulated that year, just a small fraction, an incredibly tiny percentage, left the mint bearing significant production errors that collectors drool over, the kind of minting mishaps that elevate a coin's value exponentially beyond its face value. Now these aren't the sort of minor scratches or wear and tear you'd find on any circulated nickel. We're talking about major die errors, doubled dies, off-center strikes, wrong planchet strikes, clipped planchets, and even die cracks and cut breaks that result in noticeable disfigurements on the coin surface. And what makes the 1997D nickel particularly valuable is the combination and sometimes the layering of these errors. In essence, you might find a 1997D nickel that not only has a significant strike-through error, but also exhibits doubling on the date or Monticello, or perhaps was struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin or a different denomination entirely, which is rare but not impossible given the complex and high-speed nature of the minting process. Now let's talk about doubled dies. This is a key area of interest in the world of error coins, and for the 1997D nickel, there have been reported instances of doubling visible on Jefferson's eye, the lettering "In God We Trust," and even the Monticello label on the reverse. And when this doubling is crisp and visible without magnification, it becomes particularly desirable, as these errors point to a die being misaligned or struck more than once during the hubbing process, essentially engraving the design slightly offset, leading to a shadow-like appearance on the final coin. And while minor doubling might not fetch a premium, when it is pronounced and covers key design elements, the value can soar, especially when verified by a top grading service like PCGS or NGC. But that's not all. One of the more spectacular errors found on some 1997D nickels is off-center striking, where the coin design is stamped significantly to one side, often leaving a crescent-shaped blank space, and sometimes even missing part of the date or the mint mark, which can be especially exciting when just enough of the design is visible to confirm its origin, with off-center errors of around 10% to 30% being especially collectible, as they're dramatic enough to stand out, while still retaining identifiable features. Now, if that wasn't wild enough, there are also instances of wrong planchet strikes, which happen when a blank intended for a different coin accidentally ends up being fed into the press, resulting in a Jefferson nickel design on a thinner or thicker metal blank, sometimes even on a copper or silver alloy instead of the usual cupronickel composition, and this sort of error is incredibly scarce, with even fewer known examples for the 1997D issue, making them grails for serious collectors who hunt for these oddities. Another error type that boosts value is the clipped planchet, where a portion of the coin is missing due to a miscut blank before striking, resulting in a distinct crescent or curved indentation, and depending on where the clip occurs and how it affects the design elements, these coins can demand substantial premiums. Now, while each of these errors alone might raise the coin's value significantly, the most lucrative finds often involve combinations of errors, like a double die on an off-center strike or a die crack that extends through a clipped section, which raises questions not just about the minting process, but also how such a coin escaped quality control and entered circulation. And it's this intrigue and mystery that adds to the allure and value of the 1997D error nickels. But condition plays a huge role too, as coins that exhibit these rare errors in uncirculated or mint state condition, graded MS63 or higher, can fetch several $100s at auction, while circulated ones, though still valuable, might command less depending on wear and visibility of the error. So collectors are advised to inspect their 1997D nickels carefully, using a magnifying glass or microscope and checking known error hotspots like the date, Jefferson's eye, the lettering, and the edges of the coin for signs of misalignment, cracks, or clipping. And as more people become aware of these error coins, the demand increases, further raising prices, especially for verified, graded examples that have been authenticated by respected services. And don't forget, the market is also influenced by trends, exposure through viral videos or online posts, and overall economic conditions in the collectibles world. So a coin worth $100 today could spike to $400 or more as word spreads or a prominent collector drives demand. Plus, there are stories from people who've found these coins in their spare change, coin rolls from the bank, or inherited collections, proving that this treasure is still out there waiting to be discovered. So whether you're a seasoned numismatist or a beginner with an eye for detail, the 1997 D nickel is a perfect example of how a common coin can become uncommon through the unpredictable chaos of minting, where mistakes, often seen as flaws, turn into features that make the difference between 5 cents and a small fortune. So get your coin jars, your magnifiers, and your grading references ready, because the next valuable error coin might already be in your hands. And the story of the 1997 D nickel shows us that when it comes to coin collecting, it pays to look twice, inspect closely, and always stay curious about the little details others might miss. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden world of valuable coins, be sure to check your own collections and let us know in the comments if you've ever come across an error coin that made your heart skip a beat, because the world of numismatics is full of surprises, and with every new discovery, the legend of coins like the 1997 D nickel continues to grow, inspiring more collectors to keep hunting, keep learning, and maybe even stumble upon a small metallic piece of history that turns into a life-changing find. Last 2003 P5 cent USA coin enthusiasts and treasure hunters alike, where today we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating modern coin stories ever to hit the numismatic world, a story that continues to astound collectors and casual viewers alike. So buckle up, because today's topic centers around the mysterious, elusive, and surprisingly valuable 2003 P Jefferson nickel, better known among collectors as the 2003 P 5-cent coin that has captured significant attention for its eye-popping errors and skyrocketing value, sometimes selling for as much as $321 or more, despite its original face value being just 5 cents, which makes it an incredibly desirable target for anyone lucky enough to find one in pocket change or old collections. And in this video we're going to explore exactly what makes this unassuming little coin worth big money, the kind of details and features you need to be looking for, the history behind its minting, the possible causes of its production mistakes, and the reasons collectors are willing to pay a premium for one in great condition. So whether you're a seasoned coin collector, a casual enthusiast, or just someone who loves the thrill of a treasure hunt, this is the kind of story that reminds us all that sometimes great fortune comes in the smallest and most unexpected of forms. And it all starts in the year 2003, when the Philadelphia Mint, one of the principal facilities responsible for producing the nation's coinage, issued a run of Jefferson nickels that at first glance looked perfectly normal, featuring the familiar left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his iconic Monticello home on the reverse. But soon after their release into circulation, sharp-eyed collectors began noticing strange anomalies, peculiarities that defied standard minting expectations, and as reports of these errors accumulated, it became clear that something unusual had occurred during the production process, with some coins exhibiting significant die clashes where elements of the reverse design were faintly imprinted onto the obverse side due to improperly aligned dies colliding without a coin planchet in place, creating ghostly impressions that are immediately noticeable to trained eyes, while others had doubled dies, especially around the word Liberty or the date 2003, with clear doubling visible under magnification, and in some cases even to the naked eye, and that alone would be enough to raise interest and demand among collectors, because doubled die errors are historically some of the most popular and highly sought-after mistakes in the world of coin collecting due to their rarity and the unique visual appeal they offer. But that's only scratching the surface of what makes the 2003 P nickel stand out, because in addition to those features, other examples from this run displayed striking misalignments, such as off-center strikes where the image is clearly shifted, with parts of the design missing entirely, or rotated dies that resulted in disorienting and surreal final coins where the obverse and reverse do not properly align when flipped, and in even rarer cases, coins have been found with incorrect planchets, that is, blanks intended for other denominations, such as dimes or foreign coins, which were mistakenly fed into the machinery used for nickel production, creating mismatched coins that clearly deviate in weight, size, and appearance from what would normally be expected. And when it comes to mint errors like these, the more unusual and dramatic the flaw, the more desirable the coin becomes, particularly among collectors who prize uniqueness and imperfections as part of their hobby. And what's even more interesting is that many of the 2003p nickels that command high prices today were not immediately recognized for their value, often passing unnoticed through years of regular circulation until someone finally spotted an error, leading to a surge of interest in this particular year and mint mark combination. And as more and more people began inspecting their own coins, the numismatic community started cataloging known varieties and errors, some of which are now listed in professional guides and databases, making them easier to identify, but also increasing competition among collectors trying to get their hands on one. And of course, condition plays a huge role in determining how much any given coin is worth. A 2003p nickel with a dramatic error in pristine, uncirculated condition is far more valuable than a similar one that's heavily worn or damaged, which is why grading services like PCGS and NGC have seen a steady stream of these coins submitted for certification, with top-graded examples achieving prices that seem astonishing for a 5-cent piece, including the now famous sale of $321 for a specimen exhibiting multiple errors in near-mint condition. And part of what drives up the value beyond the physical error itself is the story and intrigue that surrounds these coins. Collectors love a good mystery, and the exact circumstances that led to so many distinct types of errors appearing in a single year's production remain somewhat unclear, leading to speculation about problems with quality control at the Philadelphia Mint during that period, perhaps due to mechanical malfunctions, die maintenance lapses, or human error. And while the U.S. Mint is typically highly efficient and precise in its operations, occasional lapses do occur, and when they do, the results can be unexpectedly valuable, especially when they're caught by the public and turn into high-profile collecting phenomena. And as the coin collecting community continues to grow thanks to online marketplaces, YouTube channels like this one, and dedicated forums where enthusiasts share findings, post images, and offer detailed discussions about error types and values, the fame of the 2003p nickel only continues to spread, fueling interest and keeping prices high, because scarcity and demand go hand in hand, and the more people who are chasing after a limited number of high-quality error coins, the more valuable those coins become, especially as older examples get tucked away into private collections and become even harder to find. And so the question for viewers becomes, do you have a 2003p nickel hiding in your change jar tucked in a drawer, or sitting unexamined in an old coin roll that could be worth hundreds of dollars or more? And if so, do you know how to identify the key features that make it special, such as doubling in the lettering, die clashes, planchet anomalies, off-center strikes, rotated dies, or other irregularities that signal a valuable error coin? And that's where knowledge becomes power, because knowing what to look for is the first step in turning an ordinary find into an extraordinary payday. And even if you're not lucky enough to have one already, there's always the possibility of discovering one in the wild. Whether by hunting through bank rolls, estate sales, or flea markets, and with every coin you examine, you're participating in a kind of real-life treasure hunt, one where patience, observation, and a little bit of luck can lead to an exciting discovery. And in the case of the 2003p nickel, it's a perfect reminder that even modern coins can hide significant value, especially when a confluence of production mistakes aligns to produce something truly out of the ordinary. And it's also worth mentioning that the value of coins like this is not just in their numismatic worth, but in their historical and educational value as well, because each error tells a story of how coins are made, how systems can occasionally break down, and how those breakdowns can create collectible artifacts that are treasured for years or even generations to come. And that's part of what makes coin collecting such a compelling hobby. It connects the past to the present, the ordinary to the extraordinary, and transforms everyday objects into windows of discovery and wonder. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the mysterious case of the 2003 P5 cent coin worth $321 and potentially even more, we encourage you to take a fresh look at your own change. Revisit that old jar of coins you've been meaning to sort through, and see what treasures might be waiting just beneath the surface, because you never know. Your next great find might be sitting right under your nose, and with a trained eye and a bit of persistence, you could be the next person to uncover a rare and valuable error coin that turns pocket change into a prize worth hundreds of dollars. And who wouldn't love a story like that to call their own? So keep collecting, keep hunting, and stay tuned for more fascinating finds right here, where every coin tells a story, and every collector has a chance to strike gold in the most unexpected places.